As the name implies, Five Guys is famous worldwide for their burgers and fries. I don't know why I did that, it was just coming together. I promise no more rhyming. Five Guys is an incredible success story of how a family business used an unconventional model to grow into a major chain of restaurants. There are currently about 1,700 of them in operation, generating system-wide sales of well over $2 billion a year. They're in practically every state in addition to Canada, Europe, Asia, the Middle East, and that's only the beginning, because according to the company, there are an additional 1,500 units in development. So if there isn't one near you just yet, you may just have to be patient. It's an exciting story. So for today, I've identified 6 reasons behind their success. The first one being their willingness to take risk. And I realize this is an aspect of building any business, but the family behind Five Guys has demonstrated an abnormally high risk tolerance that I have to respect. The name Five Guys comes from Jerry Merle and his 4 sons. Jerry was a financial planner in Washington, D.C. that was always trying to start his own business. Throughout the 1970s, he made separate attempts in the industries of oil, bottled water, real estate, but none of them worked out. By 1986, he had 3 sons from his first marriage named Matt, Jim, and Chad, who were all in high school, in addition to a 4th son from his second marriage named Ben, who was still very little. Here's where the risk comes in. Since 3 of his kids were soon to be graduating high school, Jerry had saved up money for them to go to college. Well, he had this conversation with them where he essentially gave them the choice to either use the money as intended to go to college, or they could group together and use it to start a restaurant. Obviously, they chose the restaurant in what was absolutely a risky decision, sacrificing a college education in favor of opening a tiny restaurant that, let's face it, did not look very promising. The bank wasn't willing to lend them anything to get it started, so they were forced to stretch their money by opening it at a cheap, out-of-the-way location and even locating some broken old kitchen equipment and personally rebuilding it. By the way, about a year later, they had a 5th son named Tyler that they like to say replaced Jerry as one of the Five Guys. Obviously, he remained involved in the same way, but ever since, the Five Guys are officially the 5 sons. So that was already a risky way to start a business, but I would say that that risk was amplified considering the unusual principles that they used to run the business. Jerry and the family have this very specific business model that at times seems counterintuitive, but they refuse to deviate from it because they feel very strongly about it, and I have to say, you can't argue with the results. One of these principles is simplicity, because I think anyone who has ever been there will agree that there's nothing complicated about Five Guys. The walls have a very basic red and white checker theme, their containers typically have that same basic theme or sometimes nothing at all. How many restaurants out there serve your food in a plain brown paper bag? And that food inside the bag was ordered from an incredibly simple menu. See, part of the initial idea came from this place called Thrasher's that Jerry had been to in Ocean City, Maryland. That place served only French fries, but because they used high-quality potatoes and they made them really good, there was always demand for them. It helped him realize that it doesn't take a bunch of items, just a few really good ones. In the beginning, their menu had burgers, fries, hot dogs, and drinks, and over the last few decades, the only new items that they've added are a few basic sandwiches, and in 2014, milkshakes. That's easily one of the simplest menus of any restaurant you'll ever see. Your initial instinct may be to think that it's better to have more items because it appeals to more people, but the Merle family has always had a different mentality. They believe that it's smart to put all of your resources and all of your energy into one thing and make that one thing as good as you possibly can. Once you do that, everything else will follow. On their website, it shows this great quote from Jerry's mother. She said, "If you can give a good haircut, or if you can serve a good drink at a bar, or if you could serve a good hamburger, you will always make money in America." They have tested a few other menu items over the years like coffee and a chicken sandwich, but they were quickly eliminated in favor of simplicity. They want to be sure that everything on their menu is really good because anything bad could ruin the customer's experience. It's kind of like the thing where they want someone to walk out remembering the good burger they just had instead of the bad coffee. My next reason is closely related to all of that, but it is the quality. Early on, when they were first selecting ingredients from vendors, they would almost almost completely ignore the price and the distance and everything else and focus entirely on the quality of them. They would put up with the hassle or pay a ridiculous premium as long as they felt that it was the best possible ingredient. That higher cost would either cut into their profits or be reflected on their menus. They would charge the customer more, which again may sound counterintuitive, but again, their goal was to sell the best possible food and trust that the rest would fall into place. I'm not trying to make this turn into a big commercial for Five Guys food, but they do a lot of things that others don't to ensure higher quality and hopefully make it worth that premium that you're paying as a customer. Some of the things, none of their ingredients are ever frozen, they hand form the meat for their burgers, the buns are baked fresh each morning and toasted on the grill, which is slower and more expensive than a traditional bun toaster. Looking at their fries, they are fresh cut and cooked in peanut oil. It's actually the special process where they soak them in water and then pre-fry them, and that way they never have to freeze and they come out less greasy. I thought it was cool that when they were first looking for a potato supplier, they went back to Thrasher's, that place that had the really good fries, and found out where they got their potatoes from because that was the best fries that they knew about. Additionally, everything is made to order, which does take longer. In fact, one time Jerry put out a sign that said, "If you're in a hurry, there are a lot of really good hamburger places within a short distance from here." Again, sounding counterintuitive, but maybe a little genius on its own level. A sign like that makes the customers realize that the trade-off is intentional. It's not that the staff is being incompetent, it's helping the customer see that time that they wait as like a payment for getting a better product. Jerry and the family had already calculated that sacrifice, and that sign was like a shocking way of getting the customers on that same page. I should also mention that the large portions and a wide selection of free toppings are also parts of their plan to give you the best possible burger. My next reason kind of goes along with the first two. It's a lack of paid advertising. If this video were to cut to an ad right now, it's not going to be an ad for Five Guys. Again, this is part of their plan of putting everything into their food and trusting that everything else will fall into place. They say that their best salesman is the customer because if they have a good experience, they're going to tell others about it. Since that first restaurant was in such a bad location, they relied almost entirely on word-of-mouth advertising, and it hasn't changed much since. On another level, their food has won a bunch of awards over the years and received positive reviews that have helped the business. They also have a pretty strong following on social media. In 2009, they gained some publicity when the President of the United States famously went there to order some food. And by the way, Barack Obama places his order exactly like you would expect him to.
One burger and one fries for me.
Do you see how it all comes together? Having quality products has led to all of these free forms of advertising, allowing them to save money by avoiding paid advertising and instead putting that money into their products. My next reason for their success is their initial slow and steady approach when it came to expanding. Any regular viewer of this channel could tell you that one of the most common mistakes a business like this can make is expanding too quickly. Well, that was not an issue for Five Guys because they could not have been more conservative about it in their early years. For every new restaurant, they would personally go out to people that they already knew and present it as an investment opportunity. Jerry was able to convince them, not only because there was always a high demand for their food, but because he would give them really attractive terms. They would get a percentage of the revenue rather than profits, and he said that they could get their money back and pull out of the investment whenever they wanted. This conservative, personal approach to running their business did not result in many locations. After 17 years, they were up to 5 of them, all located in that DC, Northern Virginia area. But in 2002, everything picked up at a tremendous rate, and that is because of my next reason: franchising. This is essentially when other people started paying the Merle family for the rights to own and operate their own Five Guys locations. Pretty much every national food chain does this because it's such an effective way to grow the brand and open a bunch of locations. But since other people are in charge of those restaurants, the central company tends to lose a degree of control, and quality becomes a big concern. For that reason, Jerry avoided franchising for the longest time because he felt it simply wasn't fitting for them. He thought it would be hard to find people that shared their vision that involved high ingredient cost, a limited menu, and a lack of advertising. But because they were so slow and so steady for so long, they were able to establish a proven system with results that couldn't be disputed. So they started franchising multiple locations at a time. They made these area agreements, giving someone the rights to open a bunch of them in a certain region. They almost instantly made them for all of Virginia, then after a few years, it was all of the US, and for the last decade or so, they have focused their efforts on the international market. it. Opening one in Canada in 2010, London 3 years later, and as I said, today they're all over the world. They had built up all that demand for people wanting to franchise their restaurant over those 17 years, and when they finally agreed to do it, they became the fastest growing restaurant in the country. So despite that crazy speed, they've always been effective in finding franchisees that are in strong financial positions. In fact, it's been reported that Shaquille O'Neal once owned over 150 Five Guys franchises before selling them in 2016, which was about 10% of their locations. And since quality does remain so important to them, they've conducted these weekly audits regarding their food and cleanliness and everything else about the restaurant, and award the crew members with bonuses if they do exceptionally well. So there you have it. Five Guys took some risks to establish a simple restaurant that sacrifices a lot of things like price, variety, wait times, and advertising to provide the customer with quality food. They slowly but steadily built and proved that system before ultimately agreeing to carefully but quickly franchise enough locations to become an international chain of successful restaurants. Let me know in the comments, what do you think of Five Guys from a business perspective and from a customer's perspective? I would normally be curious about your favorite menu item, but there's not many to choose from, so I'm guessing most of you would just say it's their burgers and fries. But I will ask, do you think they found a good balance? Are the burgers so good that it justifies the price and wait times or whatever else? Now, as always, there is more to the story, more that could be said about them, but I believe that I've touched on the core reasons behind their success, so let me know if you agree with that or if there is something else worth mentioning. And any other thoughts you have about Five Guys burgers and fries, leave them in the comments. I'd like to hear what you have to say. Thank you for watching.